Hey everybody, welcome back once again to another episode of The Art of Photography. My name is Ted Forbes. Before we get going today, I want to give a quick shout out to a couple guys who started a thread in the Flickr group that live in Ireland that are trying to get a meetup going. So if you live in the UK, you live in Ireland, and you would like to travel and check this out, this thread, I told these guys I'd give them a shout out, and they're pretty regular participants in the group. And so they're pretty cool guys, and I think it would be a lot of fun. If you've never been to one of our meetups before, you know, a lot of times I'll go to them and they're great. I get to meet people who watch the show. Everybody's got this kind of common bond of being a photographer and having a huge interest in photography. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of fun socially. Anyway, go check it out. I'm not actually planning on coming to this meetup, but you know what, weirder things have happened and you never know. So we'll see. But anyway, if you want to check this all out, visit us on the Flickr group, and the URL for that is flickr.com/groups/art of photography, and go check it out. Anyway, today we're talking about metrics for success as a photographer. And before I totally jump in, I want to explain kind of what I'm talking about with this. The last, probably about 5 episodes at least, we've been talking about ways, you know, kinds of things that you can think about that are going to make you much deeper as a photographer and try to make you much better. And in the last couple weeks, I've been thinking about this because mainly for myself, I'm in a period right now where I really want to improve and get to the next level of my own work. And I love sharing this here with you guys because I can get discussions, things like Flickr and email, where, you know, we can kind of have this discussion and talk about it. And one of the observations that I've made, at least with my own work, is a lot of times, you know, when you're trying to do something like, you know, kind of a general comment like I'm going to get better as a photographer, what does that mean? That's a very subjective thing to say, because my definition of getting better may be different than your definition. And so trying to bring this into something that's a little more tangible and a little more concrete and measurable. And one of the things that I think people tend to forget, and myself included a lot, is, you know, you're taking pictures, you're trying to get better, you're checking people's work out, you're trying to become inspired, but you're not really measuring what that success is and what that success means to you. And so what I would like to do, and I would like to encourage you to do, I have a list that I've made, and it's just a text file, and I will put this in the show notes. And so if you're watching this and you want to go download the list, go visit theartofphotography.tv, and that's our show website. And on the page for this particular episode, I will have a link to this text file in the show notes. But what I would suggest is do something that you can revisit every so often, like, you know, once every 2 weeks, once a month, once a year at least, preferably, you know, the more often the better, and to try to track some success. So what would be cool is if you found any of these questions to be applicable to yourself. These are just ones I did for myself. You could take those and maybe put them into a spreadsheet, add some of your own, and really try to honestly revisit those numbers and sit down and have some quiet time for an hour once every 2 weeks or once a month, and try to see how your success is being measured over a period of time. And I think this is really important because it's one thing just to say I want to get better, and it's another thing to actually find a way to benchmark that and actually see what you're doing. Sometimes the benchmark stats, let's say, are not good. Like, for instance, I didn't produce whatever it was that I was trying to do that month. And so you tend to want to ignore those bad numbers. But what you want to do is, if you can see those over time, it forces you to remember them and try to bump them up a little bit. And so, you know, this may be a little bit out there, so bear with me. But basically, I've divided these into a number of sections here. And my sections basically are things that I think are important to defining what makes me better as a photographer. And I think they would probably be generic enough to go for everyone. But section 1 is the quality of work that you're doing. Second is education. I have publication, I have participation, I have online work, and I have vocation. Okay, so some of those may be not applicable. If you're just an amateur photographer, you shoot for fun, vocation may not be something you're interested in. However, if this is something you're interested in doing for a living on some level, then vocation may be more important. But I'm going to read some of these questions that I put in here. And what I look for when I'm developing questions like this, I'm going to kind of read through them because I think they make the most sense for me, and I think you can take these away and turn them into something that makes sense for you with some little editing. But it's one thing to ask yourself a question that gives you a number that you can benchmark out of it. And you could say something like, you know, how many pictures did I take this week? Okay. That doesn't tell you a whole lot. So what you want to do is try to come up with either rewording that question or balancing with another question that would make more sense, okay? So for instance, it's one thing to say, you know, how many pictures did I take in the last month? That could be a very high number. However, how many of those are really quality images that could be used for an exhibition? Okay, so maybe that's a better question. So, you know, what is that ratio? Because you want that to try to improve a little bit. The other thing too is, you know, there are certain photographers, depending on your style and what you do, that taking a lot of pictures isn't always a good thing, whereas there's people who have a different style or a different thing that they're doing where taking a lot of pictures is essential. For instance, if you're a sports photographer, if you're a journalist, if you're a street photographer, a lot of those things involve capturing a very specific moment, and a lot of times you do have to go out and kind of machine gun in order to capture those moments sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for instance, if you shoot still lives, or if you shoot for instance portraits or something like that are studio setups, machine gunning 800 pictures may or may not be something you want to be doing all the time. You want to be thinking about it more. So how many of those are useful is a better question. So a lot of these questions are geared like that. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for a measurable benchmark that is meaningful in some way. And so, for instance, I'll read through these. For section 1 here on quality of work, how many images have you made in the last 2 weeks? Second question is, what percentage of those images would you keep? Okay, so are you shooting a lot just to get a handful of images, and is that something that is important to you as a photographer? There's no right or wrong answers to any of these. Number 3, how many pictures do you take to produce one image? It's kind of a culmination of that. Number 4, how many images have you produced in the last 30 days that are worthy of exhibition display? Number 5, how many photo shoots have you done in the last 30 days that presented a new challenge outside your normal comfort zone? A lot of times it's real easy to do photo shoots that are inside our comfort zone, but we're not pushing those boundaries and trying to improve ourselves as photographers. Number 6, how many photo shoots have you done in the last 30 days that were experimental in nature, designed to produce something different than what you normally produce? What percentage of the work you produced in the last year could be considered derivative of another photographer or artist? That's a tough question. I see it, and I've done it too, where a lot of times you are trying to learn by emulating a style, and then all of a sudden you start copying that style. And that's something that I think in the long run is unhealthy to do as an artist, that you want to try to get away from. I think it's okay in a learning type situation, but asking yourself that question to be honest with yourself is very important. So anyway, this goes on and on. I'll go to some other sections here. For instance, education. How many art or photography classes or workshops have you taken in the last year that are geared towards a topic you wanted to learn? You're never too old to learn, and you should be doing workshops. That's a number I would like to go up because I've only done 2 this last year. How many classes or workshops have you taught in the last year to share what you know with others? This could be informal, it could be something that's very formal, but it forces you to go look for those opportunities. Teaching is very important, and obviously I do these podcasts. I love teaching, I love sharing information. What I love the most about teaching is it forces me to get my information really learned the right way and really have all my facts in line, all my stuff together in order to relay it to somebody else. So anyway, so there's some education stats. For instance, for publication, how many print or scholarly publications did you submit work to in the last year? Okay, so this isn't Flickr, this is like something like a magazine or something that you would have to be accepted into. So how many of those have you entered? How many print or scholarly publications accepted and published your work? How many images did you produce in the last year that were made with publishing in mind? And so that's a difference too. Sometimes you want to be published, especially with fine art, and you may shoot weddings during the day, and that work isn't useful for those types of publications, so you need to start doing new work that may be outside of that a little bit. Participations, how many shows did you do in the last year? And these could be solo shows, group shows, could be something at a coffee house where you have a group of guys that find a coffee shop that will let you put work on the walls and have an opening so they can sell coffee one night. So those are very important. Some harder questions too. What percentage of the images you put in shows are older greatest hits of your career? So are you relying on work you've already done, or are you pushing that forward to do new work? Online statistics. How many articles did you write this year for online use, personal or for another website? Here's a good one. How many online discussions have you participated in this month that were not related to equipment? I think it's real easy for us to all get into Flickr and stuff and start typing and participate in discussions, but how many of those were actually meaningful for photography, because most of it out there is very gear oriented. So anyway, and finally vocation. How much has your pricing structure increased in the last year? Okay, are you moving up, or are you staying the same, or are you going down? Hopefully not. What percentage of your clients were based on word of mouth referral? That's very important too. Basically, are you getting word of mouth referral? It's really expensive to do ads, and I think probably the best advertising you can get is other people talking about you. What percentage of your income was based on paid advertising? Kind of balances the other question. What percentage of your income came from social media based initiatives? So that's an important thing too. A lot of these things don't have much to do with photography. They have a lot to do with self-promotion. And then finally, what percentage of your clients are repeat business versus first-time or one-time clients? So anyway, these are just like, I'm trying to think of hard questions that I can ask myself, and I would encourage you to do the same. Like I said, if you go to theartofphotography.tv, I'll have a link to a text file so you can download these and check them out. And I would recommend trying to keep something like a spreadsheet and revisit these every 2 weeks or once a month or once a year. And I would discourage you from doing it less often because you'll forget about it. But if you can get into the habit of once every 2 weeks or once a month revisiting these and answering anything that's changed, over time, what you'll start to do is see these benchmarks. More importantly than seeing benchmarks or seeing these go up or down is knowing that they're there, because I think just knowing that they're there and being aware of these things all the time, being able to maybe change some of these questions, those are the kinds of things that are going to make you actually better as an artist or make you actually better as a photographer. And like I said, these are very customized for my own career and my own work, and I would encourage you to use that as a starting point and maybe alter that or modify it to ask yourself some things that could relate to your own work or your own career. I would keep things as factual as you can. I would not get subjective about them. Subjectivity is fine, but it usually is very opinion in nature. So try to come up with things which you can get hard, measurable number with, and keep these number related too. I think for answers like yes or no's or one-time answers are just that. They're one time, and that doesn't give you any tracking over a period of time. So rewording everything so it can get into a number. Anyway, I know this was a little bit out there, but it's something that I think gets ignored a lot by people. Most of the successful photographers and artists that I've met and I've interviewed and I've been able to have the pleasure of hanging out with, you can tell they all think like this all the time. That's a common trait that they all have. And I think it's really important for us, when we're trying to strive for that, to do the same thing. So anyway, that's about all I have. Follow me on the Twitter. My handle is Ted Forbes. That's twitter.com/Ted Forbes. And let's see, you can follow me on the Facebook if you want. I rarely post there. I guess I have a page there. But anyway, once again, this has been The Art of Photography, and thank you for watching.